Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tiger podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with tanned, barely not cooked from the Florida heat, Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. It was a hell of a week, Ev. We had all kinds of things. We had losses. We had fans being ejected. We had crazy weather. We had Mark Gorash behind the plate for 2 days. We had lots of stuff this week, but I need you to recap it for me.
Yeah, well, starting off, a 3-3 record this week for the Tigers. For the second week in a row, a 3-3 record. 2-1 versus the Pittsburgh Pirates at Comerica Park. 1-2 versus the Tampa Bay Rays at George M. Steinbrenner Field. Mark, this was an exhausting week of baseball. I think that's the best way to put it. Really, from Wednesday to Sunday, players, managers, coaches, broadcasters, beat writers, it was a grind. There was a rainout Wednesday, a rain-delayed doubleheader Thursday, then travel from Detroit to Tampa, and you get a rain-delayed night game Friday, followed by a noon game Saturday, and a noon game Sunday, with that Sunday game featuring a rain delay in what felt like the longest ninth inning in baseball history. And then a flight back home from Tampa to Detroit for a much-needed off day Monday. In Tampa, the Tigers played against the Tampa Bay Rays at George M. Steinbrenner Field, not Tropicana Field. Remember, Tropicana Field was destroyed by Hurricane Milton in October 2024. So the Rays are playing games at George M. Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, which is the spring training home of the New York Yankees and the regular season home of the Yankees' low A team, the Tampa Tarpons. So that's a long-winded way of saying the Tigers played at a minor league ballpark over the weekend, and on top of that, they had to face one of the hottest teams in baseball over the past month in 95-degree weather with intense humidity. But that's not a great recipe coming off of a 19-inning doubleheader on Thursday. I mean, the Tigers didn't even get to their hotel in Tampa until like 4 a.m. Friday after Thursday's doubleheader. I'm not making excuses for them, but again, I use the phrase exhausting week of baseball for a reason, and there was nothing more exhausting than this past weekend in Tampa. It was pretty intense.
Well, all I could say, and you and I have talked about it. In fact, we talked about it before the pod. If you have never been to Florida in the month of June, July, or August, you just cannot understand the conditions that they just played in. And to be really honest, it wasn't like the conditions were tremendous in the city of Detroit for the Pirates series. I mean, the doubleheader on Thursday I was there. I had a blast. I sat upstairs out of the rain in game one, which reminded me of about 50 baseball games I've played in my life. And it's kind of fun, but it's not. I mean, watching Tarek Skubal, I happen to be sitting with Brandon Day of Bless You Boys and the infamous mayor of Comerica Park, Tiger Mike. And we were laughing out loud before the game started because we could just see the anger coming off him as he was warming up for the first inning. The expletives being uttered. You could see he was never going to feel real comfortable in that inning with his landing foot. And he was fuming. And every pitch he threw in the first inning, you can attest to this from upstairs, he got madder with each pitch until finally the bases were loaded. He had walked 2 people and he just fired 4 nuclear missiles striking out a hitter and then getting a pop-up to get out of the inning. I think he strangled some staff member as he entered the dugout. I have never seen him that mad ever. Why don't you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so first off, just to clarify, Tarek Skubal did not strangle anybody, first and foremost. We need to make sure that that's very clear. But additionally, yeah, he was hot. And he was really frustrated. But again, Tarek Skubal, man, you have a weather app like everybody else. When AJ Hinch approaches you and says, do you want to pitch game 1 or game 2? I understand why Tarek Skubal says, I want to pitch game 1. It's because he gets to then control his preparation. He knows exactly when the game is starting, no question about it. But at the same time, he could have checked the weather like everybody else and saw, hey, there's going to be rain during game 1. Maybe I should opt for game 2 and let somebody else pitch game 1. That was ultimately his decision. So he kind of, shot himself in the foot in that way, if you will. But look, like if the weekend was a long weekend of baseball, Thursday was a long day of baseball. Like first off, you have fans that are robbed of a Tarek Skubal versus Paul Skeens matchup. Because again, Tarek Skubal picked game 1, like he always does, and Pirates manager Don Kelly assigned game 2 to Paul Skeens because he thought it was best for the team. So if you're mad at anybody there, be mad at Don Kelly, but the strategy made sense if the Pirates were playing for a doubleheader split. Like imagine if Skubal beats Skeens in game 1, well then the Pirates are just left out to dry in game 2 with really no hope. Instead, they gave themselves the best chance to win at least one of the games by pitching Skeens in game 2 as opposed to pitching him against Skubal in game 1. But anyway, the Tigers win game 1 and they lose game 2. But that game 2, Mark, was pretty insane as well. When you look at the fact that no, Tarek Skubal wasn't upset about the weather in game 2 because he pitched in game 1, but there were some fans that were pretty hot too in game 2. You had 4 fans ejected from Comerica Park. 1 for an altercation with Pirates reliever Dennis Santana in the bullpen, and 3 for a situation with Tommy Pham behind home plate. For Santana, he tried to punch a fan in the 7th inning, but he missed. He's been suspended 4 games, although he's appealing. That fan was removed from the game. For Tommy Pham, he got into it verbally with 3 fans in the home plate club, the premium seating at Comerica Park. The 3 fans were removed from the game. And then you had AJ Hinch ejected. He was ejected for arguing a play at the plate, which he challenged, but the replay operations center at the MLB offices in New York upheld the safe call on the field. After that, Hinch went out to argue. That's grounds for immediate ejection. So you had 5 people and 4 fans ejected from game 2 of Thursday's doubleheader, which ended in the 10th inning. That was after game 1 started in a rain delay. It was a long day of baseball. And then you got to go and you got to play against the Rays at the spring training home of the Yankees, as bizarre as that is. And the Tigers lost 14-8 on Friday, 8-3 on Saturday, and then they won 9-3 on Sunday. That sounds bad for the Tigers, but I think we need to put it in perspective with what the Rays have done since May 20th. First in MLB with a 22-9 record. First in MLB with 189 runs. The next closest team is the Dodgers with 165. First in MLB with a 135 WRC plus. Next closest team is the Astros at 118. Also first in MLB with a 3.10 ERA. The Rays, it's literally like the best offensive team and the best pitching team in baseball since May 20th, all led by Junior Caminero, hitting 321 with 11 home runs in his last 28 games, dating back to May 23rd. He has 19 homers on the season. My point here is this Rays team is playing like the best team in baseball right now. So don't be too upset with the Tigers for only taking 1 of 3 games in the series. And also, here's a big reminder. The Tigers still have the best record in baseball at 49-30. Among all MLB teams, they're ahead of the Los Angeles Dodgers by 1 game. Among all AL teams, they're ahead of the New York Yankees by 3 games. Among AL Central teams, they're ahead of the Cleveland Guardians by 8.5 games. Like, yes, the Tigers have a 2-5 record in their past 7 games. But they're still the best team in baseball, so don't press the panic button too quickly now.
So I want to share with people, I don't sit and watch games every night besides the Tiger game. I mean, I will tune in a little bit. In fact, Mrs. Gorash watches way more baseball than Mark Gorash does. But I will say, this last 4 or 5 days, I have sat here on the couch with her and watched quite a few other games. And I particularly watched the Mets and Philly over the weekend. And I tell you, those are 2 really good teams. The Mets are really, really good. They got a fearsome top 4 or 5 in their batting order. But to be really honest with you, there's no team I really fear. In Tampa Bay right now, that's the best team in baseball. I don't know if they'll be the best team in baseball in August, it's September and October, but right now it's not even close. They are just absolutely murdering the baseball. They play basically in a tiny ballpark where the ball flies with no foul territory. They're going to be really tough at home, and their pitching somehow always is really good with guys who were not really good on other teams a lot of the time. Their relief, a little on the questionable side because, we're all complaining about what's happened to the Tigers bullpen, but I was watching bullpens all week and everybody's bullpen sucks right now, to be really honest with you. I mean, it looks like relievers are just gassed, absolutely freaking gassed. So I think the trade deadline, which we like to talk about every week, is going to be pretty insane because everybody seems to be in the same boat about pitching and especially relief pitching. But I don't think we give the Tigers enough credit for how they have survived. We're seeing a fan base truly whine about how they played this week. Yet 3-3 have never had a losing streak this season greater than 3 games. People, take a breath. It's okay. If the worst that's going to happen is a 3-game losing streak, you're going to have a team that has a great chance to win over 100 baseball games. Try to lean back and enjoy it. Go to the ballpark like I did. I sat behind the plate for Paul Skeens. That was a blast. So, yeah. All right. It's time to jump into the big two, Ev. First question of the big two is a great question. And that is Riley Greene a franchise player, superstar in the making, all-star?
Yeah, well, Riley Greene is already an all-star, and I do think he is well on his way to superstardom. And then you have to ask yourself the question, okay, is he a franchise player? A franchise player is described as a highly valuable athlete who is not only the best player on their team, but also a cornerstone around which the team is built for the future. To me, that's Riley Greene. Like, let's zoom out and then we'll zoom in. He's 24 years old. He turns 25 in late September. He becomes arbitration eligible after this season. So we're about to see his salary increase from less than $1 million to probably right around $5 million, maybe a little bit north of $5 million. He becomes a free agent after the 2028 season, which is just 2 months after his 28th birthday. So Riley Greene, just 2 months after turning 28 years old, is going to become a free agent after the 2028 season. He was the number 5 overall pick in the 2019 draft. He made the All-Star game as a reserve in 2024. He's about to make the All-Star game as a starter in 2025. And guess what? He hasn't even reached his prime yet. 98 WRC plus in 2022, 121 WRC plus in 2023, 135 WRC plus in 2024, and now 145 WRC plus in 2025. He's still 24 years old. I mean, this is his age 24 season. 3 years from now, how good is Riley Greene going to be in his age 27 season, which is the 2028 season, just before he turns 28 in September and reaches free agency that November. So that's why I think he's a franchise player. Like, you heard it here. Riley Greene, not Max Clark, not Kevin McGonigal, not Spencer Torkelson, needs to be the franchise player for the Detroit Tigers. And then you look at what he's doing in 2025. Riley Greene is hitting .291 with 17 home runs, 59 RBIs, 24 walks, 99 strikeouts in 77 games, posting an .875 OPS. He's on pace for 35 home runs and 123 RBIs. That would be 17th in MLB for homers and 8th in MLB for RBIs. He's also on pace for 5.3 FWAR, which would be a career high. Players 24 and under right now. It's Riley Greene, Pete Crow Armstrong, Corbin Carroll, James Wood, Jacob Wilson, Andy Pages, Julio Rodriguez, Ellie De La Cruz, CJ Abrams, Junior Caminero, Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Churio. Those are the dudes. Riley Greene is top 5 among those players I just listed, if not top 3. So now we talk about, okay, like, if Riley Greene is a franchise player, well, do you give him the franchise player treatment? Do you sign him to a long-term contract extension? Do you do whatever it takes to get the job done? Because if you look at the trajectory and if you look at where he's at right now, again, he's not 25 yet. And he's going to become a free agent right after he turns 28. So he's still going to be young when he hits free agency. If you're the Tigers, what do? So Mark, do you feel like Riley Greene is a franchise player? And if he is, when do we start talking about locking this guy up long term if he's going to be able to continue this performance?
Well, I think, first of all, let's get the contract discussion out of the way. Riley Greene is not signing anything. And I'll tell you why he's not signing anything. There's a young man playing in Chicago this year named Kyle Tucker, who is basically the polished version of Riley Greene, especially offensively. He's going to get a contract this winter, and Riley Greene is going to use that contract to basically set the market for what he thinks he's worth. So if you think Riley Greene is giving away 2 years of free agency, taking him to 30, nah, none of that's happening, people. Come on. If you're signing him to a contract, you're signing him to 10 years now. And that's the question you got to start asking yourself. Are you going to sign him early? Are you going to overpay him for 3 years of his deal? what's really going to happen. So I don't really expect much contract activity to happen on the Riley Greene front, because first he needs to get the market set. 2, you have to decide if you want to be in the Riley Greene business for 10 years. And if you really watch him run and some other things, it's a question you really got to ask yourself. So it's something Riley Greene needs to ask himself also. I wanted to add how dominating Riley Greene has been. Here's a few other numbers since May 1st. And if you remember in April, he was swinging and missing and swinging and missing and swinging and missing. And we wondered what was the matter with him. Since May 1st, couple Riley Greene facts. 311, 372, 582. That's a 168 WRC plus. That's 7th in baseball. He has 11 homers. He has 43 runs batted in since May 1st. That's 3rd in baseball. He has a 23.7 barrel rate. That's 2nd in baseball. And he's been worth 2.1 WAR. So if you wonder how hot Riley Greene has been, it's sizzling hot for a long time. And not to mention, he's sliding, diving, crashing, and making ridiculous catches literally every single night in left field. He was not so great in the month of April, kind of hurt some of his defensive metrics, but since about May 1st, just unbelievable, Ev. I mean, you watch him every day from upstairs. You can see the routes. You can see the degree of difficulty. I still talk to you about the catch about 2 weeks ago at dusk when the Canadian wildfires were happening, that he went back to the wall and in the corner. It was one of the most amazing catches I'd seen this year. And it's just everything he's doing is important to winning.
Mark, he goes all out for his pitchers. He goes all out for his team. He does not care about his body. He will sacrifice himself. And Riley Greene, of all people, if he were to come out and say, hey, look, here's the deal. I want to take it a little bit easy. I'm probably not going to be diving as much. Probably won't be crashing into as many walls because I want to take care of my body. Nobody would fault him for that. But he doesn't say that. Riley Greene is going to go all out. He is 100% foot on the gas, no brakes. That's the type of player he is, and that's what makes him so special offensively and defensively. Even in this latest stretch, like he goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts June 8th against the Cubs. In 13 games since then, he's hitting .370 with 4 home runs and a 1.195 OPS. More importantly, his walk rate is 11.3%. His strikeout rate is 24.5% over the past 13 games. That's a massive boost from his 7.5 walk rate and his 30.7% strikeout rate in the full season, which is 77 games. So maybe Riley Greene has finally cleaned up some of his swing decisions. If so, I think he's going to maintain MVP caliber performance throughout the second half of the 2025 season. It could get really, really fascinating really quick for Riley Greene if he's able to keep this up with the combination of the hit tool, the swing decisions, and the power. If he has those things going for him offensively, the sky is the limit. But you go back to like, do they lock him up? Do they not? What does a contract look like? What does it not look like? I'm not advocating for Riley Greene to sign right now because you make a great point with Kyle Tucker. Like, let's see how that plays out first. But you go back and you say, okay, well, could Riley Greene sign before he becomes a free agent? Let's just say maybe he plays out a couple more years and maybe he goes the Rafael Devers route. Like, look what happened with Rafael Devers. Rafi Devers and the Red Sox, they linked up for an 11-year, $331 million contract extension in January 2023, which bought out Rafi Devers' final year of arbitration eligibility in 2023 and then locked him up through the 2033 season. That'd be like Riley Greene signing a deal 2 years from now. So in 2 years from now, would you be willing to give Riley Greene 10 years, $300 million to make him a franchise player? I mean, go look at what Rafi Devers did before signing that deal. In 6 seasons, 2 All-Star games, 2 seasons with more than 30 home runs, 2 seasons above a .290 batting average, 2 seasons with above an .890 OPS. Riley Greene has some work to do still, but in his 4th season, he's not far off from accomplishing those things. He is about to be a 2-time All-Star, which is exactly what Rafael Devers did in 6 years before signing his big contract extension. So I know that's a really big number, 10 years, $300 million, but I think it's also a realistic number when you consider what Riley Greene is doing and what he can become. Maybe you try to do 8 years, $260 million right now. Or you wait a couple years and you do the 10 years, $300 million. Now you mentioned, right, like there are risk factors here. One is the health, which could be a reason for Riley Greene to accept a long-term contract extension. Maybe he says, hey, look, let me get all my money now. If the Tigers are going to offer it, which I don't know that they are, and last I heard they weren't, but if they are, maybe he gets his money now. He's got a long history of lower body injuries, especially to his legs. Now, he has stayed healthy through the first half of the 2025 season. He cares about his body. He's on top of his diet. He's on top of his off-season workouts. He's on top of his sleep. He has really good routines in place. Like, there are reasons where if you were to tell me, hey, Riley Greene is never going to have another lower body injury in his career, I would say a little bit surprising, but at the same time, not very surprising, because this is a guy who is very committed to taking care of his body, and he's done a really good job of doing that over the past couple of years. Additionally, he also has a track record of strikeouts, currently leading the big leagues with 99 strikeouts. How does his swing trend as he gets older and the body starts to break down? I'm talking about the other side of 30. So that's like 20, 30 and beyond. Maybe the Tigers don't like how Riley Greene projects with his long swing that has a lot of tilt. So they let him walk after the 2028 season. Or maybe it's no big deal. Like, those are just two risk factors that I would at least consider. But to get back to the question, is Riley Greene a franchise player? I think he is. If I'm the Tigers, I want Riley Greene playing alongside Kevin McGonigal and Bryce Rayner for a long time. And the only way to guarantee that that happens is to extend him at a certain point. Whether it's now, whether it's 2 years from now, or whether it's, hey, let him hit the open market and then bring him back and do everything he can then. I think Riley Greene needs to be playing with guys like Kevin McGonigal, Bryce Rayner for a long time. I think those three players right there, Kevin McGonigal, Bryce Rayner, Riley Greene, I think that is the future of the Tigers. And I'd love to see all those three playing together for a long time.
I got a weird thought about the post 2030 Riley Greene. And I'll say, unless Josue Briseño is the first baseman, who was playing first base on the USA 18 and under team?
Riley Greene. No, I mean, I wrote about it. I talked to, their director. I talked to their coach. I did a whole story about Riley Greene playing for Team USA. And yeah, Riley Greene played first base. And he's proud of it to this day, by the way. Riley Greene is very proud of the fact that he played first base for Team USA. And he says he'll play shortstop if needed. He'll play center field. He'll play first base. I don't think he said he wants to catch. But yeah, Riley Greene could play first base down the road one day if the Tigers need him to play there.
I could see that 31, 32, 33 years old. I could see that. How about you?
Sounds like little Bryce Harper.
Yeah, a little bit. And Bryce Harper, by the way, pretty damn good athlete. Bryce Harper's pretty damn good. All right. So let's jump into question 2 of the big 2. We've reached the halfway point of the 2025 season. Game 81 is Wednesday. So I ask you, Av, what will we remember about the first half, and what are we looking forward to about the second half?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for me, and it's not really baseball related, so maybe I'll let you cover all the baseball topics. But first half of the 2025 season, I'm going to remember the birth of my son, Daxton. That was April 3rd, early in the season. But then beyond that, it's like how fun it's been to cover the best team in baseball in a packed house at Comerica Park. Like, I am going to remember the vibes the most. I don't know if it's going to be like one game or a player performance. Maybe for some people it is, but for me, people care about the Tigers again. Not that they didn't before, but everyone cares about Tigers baseball right now. You have your diehard baseball fans, you have your diehard Tigers fans, but the general sports fan cares about the Tigers now. My brother cares about the Tigers. He likes sports. He's a sports fan, but was he watching all the Tigers games before this season? No, he was kind of checked out. Now he's keeping up with what's going on every single day. That's what I mean when I say people care about Tigers baseball again. AJ Hinch has talked a lot about earning the respect of the fans. The Tigers teased you in 2024 with their run to the playoffs. But in 2025, they have earned the respect of the fans. And I think that's what I'll remember most about the first half of the 2025 season. As for the second half, I want to know what the Tigers do at the trade deadline. That's coming up on July 31st, 38 days away. You need a reliever and you need a bat. Those are two things that the Tigers need. No question about it. You might even need two relievers. And then I want to see how far the Tigers can go, because this is a team that believes. And belief is a powerful thing in sports. Culture is powerful. Belief is powerful. You put those two things together, Tigers have something really good brewing here. I think the Tigers believe they can beat anyone, even the Dodgers. Look back to the first series of the season. The Tigers played the Dodgers tough all 3 games, even though they got swept. Can we get a rematch in the World Series? How fun would that be? I mean, this is the best team in baseball. They're going to go to the playoffs. Should fans alter their expectations? Should we be expecting them to go to the World Series? Is it World Series or bust? Again, best team in baseball pretty much all season long. Why should we expect anything else? So I can't wait to see how all this unfolds. And I hope Scott Harris, the Tigers president of baseball operations, gets aggressive at the trade deadline to win the World Series. You haven't done it since 1984. It's time to get it done. And you have an opportunity to do it right now. I'll never forget and again, this is a football reference, but I'll never forget what Lions coach Dan Campbell said after losing the NFC Championship game to the San Francisco 49ers. Here's what he said, quote, "I told those guys, this may have been our only shot. Do I think that? No. Do I believe that? No. However, I know how hard it is to get here. I'm well aware. And it's going to be twice as hard to get back to this point next year than it was this year. That's the reality," end quote. I hope the Tigers keep that in mind in the second half of the season, and I hope they're motivated to give this team the best chance to win the World Series in 2025, no matter what it takes. Because this is a team that is capable of winning it all this year. Tigers haven't done it since 1984. They had an opportunity in 2006. They had an opportunity in 2012. They fell short. Do not fall short in 2025. You may not get back for another 10 plus years. So if the Tigers have a chance to get there, they better capitalize. I think that starts now at the trade deadline.
Here's what I have to say. As said in one of the great movies of the last 30 years, Dead Poets Society, carpe diem, seize the day, baby. You may never get another shot at it. You just never know. You never know about a lot of things. You never know about karma. You never know about injuries. You never know about who you're playing. Tigers have been the best team in baseball for the first 81 games. They've been able to not only maintain what they did at the last 50 games of 2024, they've built upon it. They have a style of play. There's a strategy in play here. And what I love about it the most is it's the same strategy almost every day. Do your damn job. Everybody has a job. Everybody has a job every day.
Even if it's Brewer Hicklin coming up for one game of a doubleheader, everyone has a job.
It's a mentality. It's a culture. They've built it. It's how they play. Do your damn job. So what I say now, and not in a critical way, I say to Scott Harris, who right now may be the most important person governing the future of the next 81 games, do your damn job. He knows what the job is. And guess what? So does AJ. So does Fett. So does Beauregard and Bird. The staff knows, Jeff Greenberg, they all know what the damn job is. They know they need a leverage reliever. They know they need actually 2 leverage relievers. They probably need a depth starter. Do they need a bat? It wouldn't hurt. Is it mandatory? Probably. You got to decide what the deal's going to be at third base. Is it Colt Keith at third base? And to be really blunt about it, you watch him play defense there. It looks a lot like Jace Young 2024. It looks a lot like Nicholas Castellanos 2014, which is enough to make you want to put a blindfold on some days. But do I think that he can play there for 7 innings every day? I do. Do I think he'll get better? I do. But my question is, you do understand you're going to have a defensive replacement at third base every single game, which is either going to be Javier Baez, who's now your shortstop, and that's a wild card going into the last 81 games of the year. How's Javi going to hold up the last 81 games? Because he has been like a fairy tale the first 81 games. Just amazing. Who has a more productive 7, 8, 9 hitter whose lineup is better at the bottom of the order than the Detroit Tigers?
And it's because of Javier Baez hitting .290 with 9 home runs and an 800 OPS in 66 games, playing center field, shortstop, third base, second base, wherever you want to put him. He's been an X factor. And this is your shortstop in the second half of the season. I'm sorry, Trey Sweeney, but this is Javier Baez's position now.
And when you ask, why is Trey Sweeney not in Toledo? I'll explain it to you real short. They don't have anybody better than Trey Sweeney to bring up. So why? Trey Sweeney isn't going to improve a lot in Toledo. So he's great depth for them. They know what he brings. He's part of the team and part of the culture. Do I expect he might go down to Toledo at some point? Yeah, if they get somebody better. But until they get somebody better, he might go down this week when Matt Vierling gets, activated. The question becomes, how are they going to navigate the pitching? AJ Hinch wins games with his bullpen. He needs more bullpen leverage. How you going to do it? Who you going to do it with? That is what I am going to be fascinated to see. And in the famous words that I utter literally every week here, Chris Stapleton, my man, nobody wins afraid of losing. That is going to be something that all of us want to see what happens. Carpe diem, baby. Carpe diem. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have one of our favorite Days of Roar guests, Mike Ferrin, one of the best baseball talkers in the world.
Everyone, I'd like to welcome Mike Ferrin, co-host of Power Alley on MLB Network Radio, to the Days of Roar podcast. It is not his first time, but it's been a minute. Mike, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. It's great to be talking to you about the first place Detroit Tigers.
Hey, before we get there, College World Series, LSU beats Coastal Carolina to win its second national title in 3 seasons. Not only do you cover Major League Baseball, but you also cover college baseball. You did close to 45 college games this year. Tell our listeners what happened in the College World Series and maybe some names to know with the MLB draft approaching.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't think LSU was the favorite coming into it. They played the favorite in the opener in Arkansas. There were only 2 SEC teams this year, which is kind of that is the power conference in college baseball. I mean, they have invested more money into it. And if you're, my age or a little bit older, you remember how the Pac-12 or then Pac-8, and they called the six-pack, right, which were the Southern California and Arizona schools, dominated the college baseball landscape. That's kind of the way the SEC has done it. 6 straight national championships for them. It was a pretty balanced field in terms of conference representation, which was cool. There was a fair amount of talent that was there. It was fun to have some outside rooting interest. Coastal Carolina was an outstanding team this year. I mean, they had a 26-game winning streak going into the finals. And the Sun Belt that they play in is a really good baseball conference. And they won both the regular season and the conference tournament. And then it swept their way through the postseason until they got to the finals. But it's a good LSU team, maybe not as powerful as some of their reputation was as a program. But they lost 1 game in the postseason. They had a dynamic duo, Kate Anderson, who very well might be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Anthony Ianson, who started the final game of the finals, was outstanding all year and probably will go towards the back of the first round or in the sandwich round. So they had some pretty good pitching overall. And there were a number of guys that will be high picks that were in Omaha. Gage Wood, who threw a 19 strikeout no-hitter, the first in since 1965 in the Men's College World Series, will likely be a back half of the first rounder out of University of Arkansas. Ivar Cat from Oregon State will be the first position player taken, most likely out of the college ranks. Caden Bodine, the catcher at Coastal Carolina, is a likely first rounder switch hitter with great control of the strike zone, excellent contact skills, and a very good receiver. So those are some of the names that come to mind that you're going to hear on draft day. And it's an interesting draft because the strength of it is really the prep bats. It's a down year for college bats. I was actually texting with somebody in a draft room about this weekend, and we were just kind of talking about how there wasn't that guy that you felt like had an impact. There's nobody who's clearly ahead of everybody else in the college ranks. And so it's a little bit of a different year there, but the prep bats are super exciting. And I think you're going to hear now teams are kind of working on their draft boards right now. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a number of prep bats in the first 2 rounds go in what has been generally a college heavy draft in recent years.
Just to build on that real quickly before we get into what the Tigers are doing at the big league level, the Tigers do have the 24th overall pick and then also the 34th overall pick. So 2 picks in the top 40. What does that mean for them? When you talk about what this draft looks like compared to years past, what could it mean for them with their picks at 24 and 34?
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, I think one thing that they did well a couple of years ago was spreading out the money, right? That's where they cut a little bit to take Max Clark, who was a top 5 pick, right? It wasn't like it was a stretch at 3, but they got some savings there, and that allowed them to take Kevin McGonigal with their second pick. I don't know exactly what that plan will be. I mean, they're kind of in that spot for that second tier of college arm, so I could see them going that route and then maybe trying to save a little bit with that and going prep bat with the second pick. like if somebody's still like Zach Root from Arkansas is a guy who's kind of worked his way into the back part of the first round. Like that would be a guy that, lefty with a, sinker, pretty good slider, runs it up to 97. My guess is that he's not going to be the most expensive guy if you take him at the back of the first round, and he might be more in the 30s on some draft boards. So you're saving a little bit there and then maybe taking a prep bat with a second pick. But it's hard for me to say that because I do get the sense that there are teams who have been more college heavy that are more interested in the prep bats, because while the floor is lower than the college players, the ceilings are significantly more. And I think that we have a lot of guys that are likely to go in the first round for among the college group who won't be major league regulars. They'll be more like role players. So I think it's a little bit of an odd draft. And for that, it makes it a little difficult to try and figure out, like, I would not be opposed to just playing it straight this year and taking the best player available and not trying to pull any, try and get creative with the draft at the back of the first round, just because I think that might be your best path to getting success out of it. But, if you can get in a position where you're getting a few of these prep bats, and there's probably 15 of them that are pretty good, I think you're in good shape.
Mike, just to remind everybody, your resume includes probably being part of the greatest prospect draft podcast in history with Jason Parks. Was a long time ago. It's still legend. So your background in doing these drafts and in talking about prospects is long term, to say the least. So we're really getting a pretty expert opinion. Throw out the name Ike Irish, local kid from Orchard Lake, St. Mary's, catcher, maybe an outfielder, can really hit. And let's also try to understand that in the Harris regime with Connor and Metzler, it's been pretty heavy prep bat. And if this is a great draft for that, wouldn't shock me, at least with their first pick, if they maintain that. Yes, they need some pitching depth in their system, and college arms is probably where it's at, but they haven't been really good at that. So I'll be curious to see what happens. You got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that there is some depth of college arms here. So like, I'm particularly a fan of Jake Knapp at North Carolina as a senior sign who, you might get in the third or fourth round and be able to take a little bit of a haircut on as a fifth year senior. He's a guy that he won ACC pitcher of the year. He's really good. Or you could take somebody like Jacob Morrison, who, lost his first game of the season in the championship series the other day. It could be like a third rounder, and you're probably going to save a little bit and get those arms there. I mean, what we know is that all-stars from the position player rank, and there are exceptions to this, obviously, but for the most part, come from the first round or first two rounds. Pitchers are found throughout the draft and throughout international signings. So it makes sense that they would focus on a prep bat in that spot. Ike Irish is really interesting. And first of all, Detroit has become this really crazy, great prep hotbed for talent, and it's littered all over college conferences. And I don't think it's a surprise that these guys are going to school versus going to the draft for the most part, just because there are so few opportunities to see them in the spring. I mean, you see a lot of guys that have success on the travel circuit, and, like Caleb Bonnemer, who was the second rounder from the White Sox last year, was a guy who really started on the travel circuit 2 years ago, and he's off to a good start in pro ball. But for the most part, these guys are going to school, and Irish might be the best pure hitter among the college bats in the draft. The problem is that I'm not sure that anybody knows where to play him. He he started as a catcher this year and caught some last year for Auburn, but their better defensive alignment had him in the outfield, and it's a little bit of an adventure there. He might be ticketed more for first base. Really, his position is batter's box. Like, that's where it is. But he's a very good hitter. He just doesn't provide, I don't think, in the end, a ton of defensive value. And so that's part of where the issue is with him. Like, if you were to say that the best two college bats, at least in terms of their ability to hit, are him and Gavin Keelan from Tennessee, I could totally see that. And I've had some scouts say that. Keelan plays up the middle and probably is a second baseman in pro ball, and probably a decent one. He played some shortstop at Louisville before he transferred to Tennessee, and he's got that kind of middle of the field profile. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that goes pretty high because of that, because there's a better chance of him staying on the dirt, and he's got a little bit different level of athleticism. But Ike Irish can really hit. And at some point, probably in that 10 to 15 range, I would think, and maybe a little before that, somebody's going to go, let's just take the best hitter. unless you're in a position like at the top of the draft where you're like, hey, we have this guy graded out better offensively than just about any other player in the draft. We know he doesn't have a position, but he's also not in the top 5 in anybody's draft board. Let's get him, cut a deal, and let's see if we can use some of that money to push some of the prep bats further down. That would be a strategy that I could see employed, because especially with a team like, I think one of the more interesting teams to watch is the Angels, because they have an extra pick from not signing Ryan Prager last year. So they've got a little bit of extra money, and they have a history of taking college guys, specifically college bats that can move quickly. If they were to do that, they're probably taking one of the bats that has a savings attached to him as opposed to taking like Ivar Arquette.
Shifting gears to the big leagues, Mike, you watch baseball and talk about baseball every single day. Tigers have the best record in Major League Baseball. How good are these Tigers, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been trying to figure that out the entire first half of the season because I think they're pretty good. I'm not sure that I'm entirely sold that they're one of the 10 best offensive teams in the sport, right? I mean, they're 5th in the majors in runs scored as we record this. And while they have some, really good offensive players, and Riley Greene's, ascendance has continued, and Spencer Torkelson's resurgence has been awesome, and hasn't been quite as good for him this month. But I think that there is better depth of offense than I anticipated coming into the year. I'm just not entirely sold that it's going to be quite enough without making some additions at the deadline, right? Like Kerry Carpenter has had some great moments, but he's been kind of more league average-ish. I mean, he's running a 277 on base percentage at this point. Dylan Dingler has performed well for a catcher, but, guys who run 3% walk rates, and there's 3 of them that they're playing semi-regularly, don't tend to sustain their success. Like the lower level tends to be around where Green is, which is about 7.5%, right? And it's not about the walks. It's just a good placebo for swing decisions, right? If you're taking first blush, because it means that you're taking enough pitches outside the strike zone to get free passes. So I think that there is some regression that could come with the offense, but I think their pitching is really good. And I think the bullpen is really good. I think, the Tommy Kahnle addition in particular is one that I think has been great for them. And I think that they're going to get a lot of outs. It's just a matter of whether or not and how aggressive they can be in adding one more impactful offensive piece that helps when and if there is some regression among the players that they have, that can help to buoy it. Because I think, listen, there's plenty of guys that are there. I think Torkelson, has certainly proven that he's much closer to what he was 2 years ago than what he was last year. Gleyber Torres, I think, continues to be a little bit of an underrated offensive player. He's had a really good offensive career. I know he's not the best second baseman, but, he's pretty good. But the rest of those guys, I'm not sure that Javi Baez is going to hit 290 all year. It's been a long time since he's pulled that trick with a low walk rate, and it's been great and fun to watch. And Javi certainly seems to have risen to the occasion. And as you guys know, when he is going good, like there's nobody more fun to watch defensively than Javi Baez, regardless of what position you put him at. So I think there's some good things that have gone on. I think AJ Hinch has done an incredible job of managing the personnel that he has, but I feel like they could use a little bit more on the offensive side before I really buy in as like, yes, this is a team that's going to end up winning 94, 95 games.
You also talk to AJ Hinch every week on Power Alley. Like, where do you think he stacks up among MLB managers right now? Mark and I were talking about this, before we started the show, and I kind of think it's like 1A, 1B with AJ Hinch and Kevin Cash, but not to discredit other managers, but like where does AJ Hinch stack up among the 30 right now in the big leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's him and Cash and Craig Counsell in terms of strategy. I think their in-game decision-making is probably a step above everybody else. And in terms of communication and managing a clubhouse, it's probably like him and Aaron Boone and Torey Lovello in that mix, like at the top. Not that there aren't other guys that are good at both of those things, but those are the ones that I would kind of put at the top. So I think AJ has the best combination of communication skills and strategy. And I think that's what makes him, really the top in the sport. And, listen, I've gotten a chance to ask him a lot of questions over the years. He's been a regular on our program for a long time, more than a decade. And he's an incredibly bright guy. And, like, I think to his credit, remember his first go round as a big league manager, he was thrown into a really difficult situation in Arizona with a veteran team that was really ticked off that Bob Melvin got fired. And I don't know that the communication skills right away were great, because I don't think it was something that AJ did necessarily. I think it was what the clubhouse didn't want from him. But I think we saw it in Houston. I think we're seeing it again with the Tigers. He is so good at explaining what the plan is and getting buy-in to make guys comfortable with roles that may be more fluid, let's say, than they would be other places. And that to me is a superpower. And that's really, as much as it seems like he rarely makes the wrong decision in terms of when to pinch hit for somebody or when to bring in a reliever or how to manage a game from that standpoint, his superpower really is the buy-in that he gets from players on all of that.
I don't, culture. I don't think any team is a reflection of their manager almost more than, the Detroit Tigers. I would say, though, the Cubs and Counsell, it is pretty amazing his impact on the culture in the Cub clubhouse and how they play now. It is a lot different than before he got there. But the Tigers are basically 100% reflection of AJ Hinch. And I think you spelled that out pretty perfectly, to say the least. All right, let's transition to some big questions and let's tap into your knowledge here a little bit. I think first and foremost, if you understand how AJ Hinch likes to manage a game, the bullpen is everything to him. I mean, it's really how he closes games, how he creates matchups. That's AJ Hinch's puppet master special almost purpose. And what do you think that the Tigers obviously need at least one high leverage back end of the game reliever and probably another depth reliever, maybe throw out a few names. And the question will be, can Scott Harris, or is he willing to, make a trade that may make him feel a little uncomfortable, but fill a pretty huge need?
Yeah, I think the problem is trying to identify who that impact reliever is that's going to be available at the trade deadline. I think we went into this season thinking Ryan Helsley would be it, but, the Cardinals are still in the mix, so I don't know that they're going to be dealing from their major league roster. So that takes down one of the best options, right? For I think a number of teams. And I do think that there are teams that, to your point on getting uncomfortable, there are going to be teams that have a more pressing need for relievers than the Tigers have. I think that's another thing to keep in mind, is that they may not end up with the top guy because they don't have a need that's as pressing as some of the other contending squads. So just remember that as we go through it. I think there's probably, like, David Bednar is a name to watch. He has put things back together after a season where it was a disastrous start as he rushed back from injury last year and then was sent to the minor leagues. The Pirates have talked about dealing him before, and ownership has gotten involved reportedly because he is a Pittsburgh guy. But Bednar, I think, would be one of the better relievers that could get moved. He misses bats. He doesn't walk guys. Tremendous dude. Very, he's very Pittsburgh, right? So that kind of, as much as people in Detroit may not love Pittsburgh, there is a certain work ethic that I think comes from that makes him, an attractive guy for teams to try and acquire. So he would be a name that would be near the top of my list as someone that you could see moved, certainly see traded at the deadline and have a potential impact. I think beyond that, a lot of the top relievers are still on teams that are in the mix or are ones with team control that doesn't make sense to be able to deal. So if Atlanta were to fall out of it, maybe it's somebody like Pierce Johnson. Again, misses bats, doesn't walk guys. He would be a name to consider in that as well. Would it be somebody like, would Tampa Bay be willing to try and do two things at once, buy and sell? Pete Fairbanks is a name that's come up a lot in trade discussions over the last several years. Is that a guy that would make sense? I think that's potentially a guy that you could see, join that mix of potential of relievers that could be dealt. I don't think Texas is falling out of it, so I don't think that there's going to be a lot of guys there. I just think that the road to try and finding impact relievers is not going to be all that easy for the Tigers because there are teams that have more pressing needs, and just knowing the way that Scott Harris values, and I would say in this case properly so, the players that he has in the organization, trading for 20 innings of a rental reliever, no matter how good your team is probably not the best return on investment that you could get. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out. They will undoubtedly acquire 2 relievers. They may not be the sexiest names in the end, but they will probably put them in a position that they can help. And I think the other thing we just don't have a full idea of, in part because we're not allowed to talk to them publicly, is how the pitching program, which is really good with Chris Fetter and Robin Lund, what they see behind the scenes that they might suggest to the front office on players that are underperforming a bit that may fit their mold. So it's tough to pinpoint exactly who those guys are, but I think I would be shocked if they didn't add at least 1 and probably 2 relief arms. I just wouldn't count on it being somebody whose name is like synonymous with closing out games.
All right, let me throw out 3 names real fast. Let's keep it short. 1, personal favorite. We've discussed them many times on this show. Seth Halverson.
Yeah, Colorado doesn't make trades, so I would take him off the board. They don't. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, they don't. They should. They absolutely should. He's a rookie. He's controllable. He would get them a tremendous return, but the next time that Colorado makes the smart move on a trade will be the first time.
Felix Bautista.
Felix Bautista, I don't think is going to be available from Baltimore. They're having a down year, but I think they plan to win next year. And I think another year removed from Tommy John surgery will be a guy that impacts their roster. So it would be a deal that would make Scott Harris unbelievably uncomfortable to be able to make that happen. And I don't see that happening for any team.
Speaking of deals that would make Scott Harris very uncomfortable, sexiest name on the board, Mason Miller.
Yeah, he's not getting traded. He's not even on the board. Like, none of those names I think are on the board, really. So they're great names to throw out there for sports talk show fodder, but the reality is that none of those guys are probably getting dealt.
Okay, so let's pull back and ask you, what do you think the Tigers need to do at the trade deadline? Like, we force-fed you some reliever names. You said no. What do you think they need to do? Like you said, obviously they're going to acquire a reliever or 2, but like, what does this team really need? I mean, you look at the offense, it's been middle of the pack in the big leagues since the middle of May. So we've already seen the offense kind of tick down a little bit. You have pounded the table for years about the Tigers needing more offense. They never really addressed it. They went out and they got Gleyber Torres, but that's really been their only impact bat that they've added externally over the last 2 years. Is it offense for them at the deadline? And who could be some of those names that Tigers fans need to watch for?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, offense is still their biggest need. I mean, I think you win in the postseason as much as we have this traditional notion of pitching and defense wins. I think the Dodgers are a really good example of what it takes to win in the postseason, which is you need to have an offense that just grinds out at bats, right? You want to be able to it's not about getting starters out of the game. It's about seeing the most pitches possible to be able to hit a mistake. And if you can get to some of the lesser relievers, it makes sense, right? And if you don't chase outside the strike zone, I think those are things that help you. So they have possibilities. I think a right-handed hitter who can play third base or a shortstop would make sense to me. I think they're a little bit more full in the outfield. I don't think that they would trade for a catcher, just because I think it's really difficult to trade for a catcher in season, because especially with the responsibilities that they have now in terms of game planning and how complex they are, it takes somebody really special to be able to acquire that guy and have him up to speed right away. So I say all that, and the problem is that there's like no third basemen that are available on the trade market, and I'm not sure that there's a shortstop either. So then it becomes, okay, well, who are the players that you can acquire that at least do something well that you can pair with a Zach McKinstry, right? Or pair with a Matt Vierling. And maybe Wenzel Perez is part of that answer when Vierling comes back, that those guys get paired together and right. But like, how do you try and find a way to create as much offensive production as you can from a position without acquiring the guy that is an impactful offensive player? And that's a much tougher path to have. So I would think right-handed hitting bat, who can play on the left side of the infield, probably makes some sense. I don't have a great name for you. Ramon Arias, I think, is a really good player in Baltimore. That's one that I would throw out there. Again, not a sexy dude, but like kind of a league average offensive performer over the course of his career. He's won a Gold Glove award. He draws some walks. He generally puts the ball in play. He can play some second base too. He gives you a little bit of depth. Again, not a name that's super sexy, but like the first world championship team that I covered was the 2005 White Sox, and their big trade deadline acquisition that year was Jeff Blum, right? And they got maligned for it, right? And if you remember 2005, they were taking on water in Cleveland was coming, and if not for a Grady Sizemore misplay second to last Sunday of the season in Kansas City, the White Sox may end up losing the division despite having a 15-game lead at one point. Their big acquisition was Jeff Blum, and they got maligned for it. Want to know who there's a statue of outside Wright Field? It's Jeff Blum for hitting a home run in the 14th inning of Game 3 of the World Series. So sometimes it's just upgrading from what you have that makes things a little bit better. And again, like McKinstry's done a nice job in whatever they've asked him to do, but I'm not sure that you can count on Zach McKinstry being an awesome offensive performer for the course of an entire season. For the most part, they've been 25% below league average at third base. I mean, that to me is the number one spot that they could address in season. And, with Vierling having had shoulder issues, I'm not sure how much they really want to play him there. He's better probably defensively in the outfield at this point anyway. I just think that that's a spot where the more you look at it, the more that's where you could address. The problem is finding that right fit. So is it, St. Louis, if they fall out of it, would they be willing to talk about Nolan Arenado? Not that he's an amazing offensive performer at this point, but he is a great defender. Could you get the Diamondbacks to do something where they're buying and selling and reunite with Geno Suarez? Like, that would actually be a pretty good pickup, I think, if you could do that. I don't know that Arizona's inclined to do that because, as you guys know, Geno is the best in the clubhouse. Like, that guy absolutely rules, and I think that they value that. So can you find a guy like that? It's not easy. It's not easy the way it looks right now, and trying to find someone who can perform at that spot. And I don't know that there's a great answer for it other than, listen, try and acquire, if you can acquire, let's say, a right-handed and left-handed utility guy that can play 3 or 4 times a week that you can try and get a slightly above average offensive contributions from. If you piece them together, that might be the move that the teams that have needs have to make at the trade deadline this year, because there's so many teams that are in contention, and the teams that are out of it either are the Rockies, who are disinclined to trade anybody, or just don't have that much to offer via trade.
Well, Mike, the perfect fit for the Tigers was Alex Bregman in free agency. Obviously, that didn't work out, but you mentioned like sports talk and names getting thrown out there, and one name around Detroit that has been thrown out is, can't the Tigers just go trade for Alex Bregman? And bear with me for a second, because I want to get your insight on this, right? What I'm asking is, do you think there's any way the Red Sox will trade Alex Bregman? Remember, it's a 3-year, $120 million contract with deferred money, opt-out clauses after 2025 and 2026. I don't think there's any way Alex Bregman opts out after being injured, so there's no way the Red Sox would even consider trading him, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, is Alex Bregman on board with the direction of the organization after they traded Rafael Devers, which is still mind-boggling to me that you couldn't, that you created this entire mess on your own, and then you traded a 28-year-old prime age, middle of the order force. That just doesn't seem right to me. That seems like that deal felt like you're leaning a little bit too much into dollars per war and not understanding the dynamics of a lineup. I think that I guess with the Red Sox, I would never say never, especially if Bregman was like, I'm out. I'm going to opt out at the end of the year. This is not for me. I don't like the direction it's going, which I don't know is going to be the case. I wouldn't say that the injury precludes him from opting out, because remember, the present day value of that contract is significantly lower because of the deferrals. And he was off to a great start. If he finishes strong, who knows? Maybe he does. Or maybe that's just the place he wants to stay. It's a great ballpark for him too. And maybe he believes so much in the kids that, he feels like that whether it's this year or next, they can get over the hump. I wouldn't put too many eggs in the Alex Bregman basket. So I can't imagine that he's going to get moved. I think there's a better chance of him opting out than him getting traded for sure.
I would say I would not be shocked in the least if Bregman opted out. He was crushing the baseball, and he's at a position of such need around baseball. I think, I find it hard to believe he's not going back into free agency. And I think the Tigers need to be a lot more savvy than they were the first time, because they were basically, at the altar getting ready to start the wedding and somehow figured out how not to get married that day. So, I'll be curious what a perfect fit he would be in every single way, shape, or form. All right, let's transition to somebody that's maybe a little Alex Bregman-ish. Tigers have the hottest hitter in the minor leagues. His name's Kevin McGonigal. He's been absolutely tattooing high A pitching. Why he has not been promoted 2 weeks ago, we do not know. I would say it's almost a lock he's promoted this week. This is something right in your wheelhouse, Mike. talk to us about Kevin McGonigal, about what you see, what you think, and, what's going to happen there, because I actually said this in April when it didn't seem like the Tigers had a shortstop solution, that wouldn't shock me if by the end of the year, Kevin McGonigal is in the major leagues. I think that's a little aggressive now, but holy smokes, can he hit?
He can, and he's doing what he's always done. But I want to point out that he's got 137 plate appearances this year, right? So, he missed a lot of time with injury last year. He's only been in high A for 25 games. And I know he's walked more than he struck out, and he's off to a great start. But man, if you want him to play shortstop, which I'm still a little bit skeptical that he's going to be a shortstop long term, I think you really have to spend some time slow playing it defensively. I really felt like his position was going to be second base. And so I think there's probably a fair amount of defensive work. I would not be in a rush to get him to AA based on 120 plate appearances. Give me a couple more weeks. What's the harm in him going up the middle of July versus now, or after the Futures game? I'm assuming we should get Futures games rosters this week. He would seem to be a prime candidate for it, right? For the Tigers. I'm not interested in rushing a high school guy. I'm not really interested in rushing anybody unless they prove that they can do it on both sides of the ball. And it's not like they get a huge benefit by him all of a sudden being in AA. I don't think that he's a guy that they bring up in the middle of the race. So there's probably some work that he still needs to do. I haven't checked in on where he is defensively, but they have to be happy with the results. He's slugging over 700 in high A. That's pretty ridiculous in the Midwest League, even as the weather warms up. That's a really loud number. And he's going to be, I think, a good offensive player. I felt like that when he was on the travel ball circuit, but I would not be rushing to get him to AA just for the sake of getting him to AA. If they'll know when it's time. And there's undoubtedly 2 or 3 things that they felt like he still needed to work on in high A, that once he checks those boxes, he'll be ready for the next challenge.
All right, Mike, before we get out of here, let's go around the league. Tigers just spent the weekend in the sauna that is the Tampa Bay Rays. That seemed to me like the best team in baseball, at least for right now. What a 3-4 they got going there. But talk to us about who you see in the second half and who you think the best teams in baseball are.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the Rays. I did not have them as being this good an offensive team. And maybe it's just that now they don't have to play their games in the Trop, that those guys have confidence going someplace else, because that really suppressed offense over the last several years. But they've been very good. Brandon Lau's been healthy. That's been a huge part of the story for them, right? Yandy Diaz has had a bounce back after a rougher year last year. Junior Caminero looks like a star. And here's one that will probably gobsmack the hardest core baseball fans on here. They lead the American League in innings from their starting pitchers. Did not see that one coming, right? When that got posited to me last week, I did one of those cartoons where the dog goes, what? That was exactly what happened when I heard that one. So yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm curious to see whether or not they can keep it up offensively. In terms of the best teams in the American League, I don't know. It's just not a great league this year, right? I think it's probably the Yankees, but they've got a lot of warts. Maybe it's the Tigers, but again, I'm a little bit skeptical on the offense. I can't believe the Astros are 12 games over 500. I did not see that one coming either. When you think about that team that lost Bregman and Tucker, and to think that their offense is being led by checks notes, Jeremy Pena, Mauricio Dubon, and Jake Myers, that's not necessarily the recipe for division champion, right? So I think one of the things that works in the Tigers' favor is that this league is pretty up for grabs. And if the Yankees are better than the Tigers, it's not by a wide margin, right? At some point, even if they address something in the rotation, they're going to miss Garrett Cole because there just aren't that many of those guys. And their rotation's done a really fine job without him. But that's a legit ace. He's on the handful of 5 or 6 guys that you consider a true number one. So they lose him. And that's a big problem for them. Now, can they backfill that to some degree? Yeah. Their bullpen's pretty good. Their offense is, I think, a little bit better than last year's was, but I do think that there's some guys that could see a sign of regression. You've seen it a little bit this month with Paul Goldschmidt, and the numbers have come back, and Ben Rice as well. And I think that they probably need to address that. Trent Grisham hasn't had the same month offensively. So again, probably looking for depth pieces and pieces that you can move around, but they're not all that dissimilar, I don't think, offensively from what the Tigers are. The big difference between the two teams offensively is that one has Aaron Judge and the other doesn't. And Aaron Judge is amazing. And there's nobody else has Aaron Judge, right? Like there's nobody in either league that has that player. So I don't know that there's any way that you can compensate for that as an opponent. But I just think the AL is wide open. And in the National League, like it's kind of played out to some degree like we thought, right? Phillies, Dodgers, Mets, like they're kind of at the top. The Cubs offense has been really good. Their bullpen actually has been excellent for the last 2 months. And they're in with a deep farm system and a front office who's on the hot seat. They would be the most motivated buyer, I think, for a starting pitcher at the deadline and an impactful one. So I think there's a couple of things that are going in their favor, although that division is fun. And Cubs and Cardinals start a series tonight, and Cardinals have played better than expected. So I think those are kind of the best teams there. And then there's this huge mix of like the Cardinals and the Brewers and the Reds and the Diamondbacks and the Padres and the Giants that are in that next group. Although the Giants adding Rafael Devers, like that shouldn't be understated how impactful that is. They've been trying to get that guy in a trade of free agency for 10 years, somebody like him. And now that they have like one of the premier left-handed hitters in baseball who is having a career year at age 28, like that, to me, that changed the Giants from being, hey, cool story, off to a good start, let's see if we can get this fixed, to, oh my God, you got Rafael Devers. Right? Like that was basically a reaction last Monday when it was like, hey, wait a second. Did you guys hear Rafael Devers is a Giant? Like that was such a massive move on their part.
Finishing up with the Tigers, since August 11th, 2024, the Tigers have an 80-43 record in 123 games, which is just incredible. And you mentioned the wide open American League. Yes, the Yankees have Aaron Judge, but the Tigers have Tarek Skubal. And then you could say, well, the Yankees have Max Fried, who's been, almost equally as dominant for them this year. But if you're a Tigers fan, Mike, and you're in their seat, what are your expectations for this team when you do consider the wide open American League, the success that the Tigers have had since August 11th, 2024? Like, redefine the expectations for this squad moving forward as we look to the second half of the season.
My expectation, if I were a Tigers fan right now, or if I were sitting around in Detroit just analyzing the Tigers, is that my expectation is for them to win and to win the division and to go deep in the postseason. Now, we know the postseason is a crapshoot in baseball, like unlike any other sport, right? That's the great equalizing force, and 40% of the league makes the playoffs in each league. So it makes it much more challenging, but 100%, my expectation is for this to be a team that makes the playoffs, that likely gets one of the top 2 seeds, so they get the buy-in in the first round, and has a legitimate chance to win the American League pennant. I think that they have played well enough to that point. Now, that puts the pressure on the front office to ensure that that's the case. And this is the challenge, right? And this kind of brings a full circle to what we're talking about in overpaying for relievers, right? And why they may not be motivated. Listen, I get trying to keep a sustainable winner going, right? One, you have to win first. And the fact is that you only get so many bites at the apple to win. And as much as you want to try and keep windows open, they open and close faster than you expect. The Tigers are a great example of that. It opened on August 11th last year. Nobody was expecting the window to open and then stay open the way it has this year. So you'd better capitalize on that, because in the end, flags fly forever. And I want to see a front office that is aggressive, that treats this season as special as it is, even if it makes them a little bit uncomfortable. And I do think that they will do that. I think that there will be that move that will be impactful if there's a player available to them. This is different than last year's deadline, right? This is, they have to know that that's the case, and their system is in way better shape than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. And it's going to be in better shape after this draft too. They're in a position where they can start talking about trading players. Now, they're not going to trade Max Clark, and they're not going to trade Kevin McGonigal, nor should they, because those guys are going to be everyday players and really good ones in the not too distant future. But there's enough depth for them to be able to add somebody of impact that makes them a legitimate contender to win the American League pennant. And so that would be my expectation. No pressure, but listen, they've done it to themselves by playing. So they're 19 games over 500 on June 23rd, for crying out loud. Like, let's go. It's go time. Let's do this. I want to see them go after it. Let's not necessarily throw caution to the wind, but let's be willing to improve this club to increase their chances of winning in a postseason series. And that, to me, is finding guys who can miss more bats and finding guys who really control the strike zone and as offensive players. And I think that's what their focus will be.
You heard it here, Tigers fans. It is time to chase a ring. All right, Mike, thank you for coming back on the Days of Roar podcast. Let's do this again, maybe for a World Series preview like we've done the past 2 years, hopefully talking about the Tigers with you in late October. It's been great.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Mike.
Everyone, that was Mike Ferrin, co-host of Power Alley on MLB Network Radio. We have more to discuss this week, including a game of concerned or not concerned. But first, let's take a break.
All right, Mike Ferrin. If I could have him on every week, I would.
He's a legend.
Pure and simple, the best baseball talker in the world. I don't even think it's close. So, all right. Want to do a fun little segment, midway point of the season. Been some good things, been some bad things, but we need to address a few elephants in the room and make Tigers Twitter happy. Need to talk about some individual players who aren't performing up to their normal standards, at least recently. We're going to play a little game called Concerned or Not Concerned. So, Ev, let's start with the biggest elephant in the room. He's allowed 14 earned runs in his last 3 innings pitched. Jack Flaherty. Concerned? Not concerned.
I'm concerned about Jack Flaherty. He was throwing on flat ground before Sunday's game with pitching coaches Chris Fetter and Robin Lund watching him. And to me, that's a sign that Jack Flaherty has never figured it out mechanically. Just like he was searching for his mechanics back in spring training, he is still searching for his mechanics now. He has a 4.83 ERA in 15 starts. Now, he did have a 5-start stretch recently where he had a 1.78 ERA. So maybe he found something for a minute there, but in his past 2 starts, it's 15 earned runs with 8 walks and 8 strikeouts across 7 innings. That is a 19.29 ERA. Remember, Jack Flaherty is making $25 million in 2025, but with 15 starts, he has increased his 2026 salary from $10 million to $20 million. So that is how much he will make in 2026 if he stays with the Tigers, $20 million. He has an opt-out clause in his contract, but he needs to have the best second half in baseball history to opt out of $20 million. So he's probably going to be back with the Tigers again in 2026. He is searching for his mechanics right now, just like he told me he was searching for his mechanics after his first handful of starts in the regular season, just like he told me he was searching for his mechanics back in spring training. To me, when you consider the fact that he is still trying to find his optimal delivery, trying to move down the mound like he was pre-2024 trade deadline with the Tigers, he is still searching for it. We are in the middle of June, late June. It's almost been a full year since the trade deadline. So if it's been almost a full year since he's been able to repeat the best version of his mechanics, moving his body down the mound, that's a reason to be concerned with Jack Flaherty. Mark, do you share the same concern? Yes or no?
Concerned or not concerned? Extremely concerned. That's my answer. And by the way, I want to highlight what you said, which was prior to the last 2 starts, Jack Flaherty was really good for the prior 5 starts. Was he 2024 Jack Flaherty? Absolutely not. Was he good? Yeah, he was solid, if not really good.
He was better than he had been.
But in the 6th inning, 2 starts ago, he allowed 6 runs. He allowed 8 runs in 2 1/3 in his last start. And basically, he's been a punching bag for the last 3 innings he's thrown. Mostly, I can attribute it to 2 things. One, absolute lack of command, where he is nibbling like crazy, gets down in the count, and then doesn't want to throw the ball over the plate because they've been absolutely terrorizing him when he does. 2, let's be blunt about it. His fastball velocity has dropped off 1.5 miles to 2 miles an hour from peak Jack Flaherty 2024. And it's really hurting him. More importantly, the velocity he's generating on a fastball like that also gives him much greater depth on his knuckle curve and his slider. So, the bottom line is Jack Flaherty, they need innings from Jack Flaherty. They need competitive Jack Flaherty. They need better Jack Flaherty. Concerned or not concerned? 100% concerned. All right, Ev. Next person on the list, Spencer Torkelson. Concerned or not concerned?
Not concerned about Spencer Torkelson. He is hitting 107 with 0 home runs, 5 walks, and 7 strikeouts in his past 8 games. He's also hitting 176 with 4 homers, 11 walks, and 28 strikeouts in his past 25 games. And he's hitting 200 with 8 home runs, 23 walks, and 45 strikeouts in his last 47 games. However you look at it, when you go to the game log and you pick through, what data points you want to reference, you can make things look pretty bad for Spencer Torkelson because, again, it's either 107 in his past 8 games or 200 in his last 47 games. But I'm not worried because he's still making good swing decisions, drawing walks, and hitting the ball hard. So until he stops doing those things, I will have faith that he will continue to be a productive hitter in the Tigers lineup. What stands out to me is it's the swing decisions, it's the walks, and it's hitting the ball hard. Spencer Torkelson continues to do all of those things. That's why I believe there are better times ahead.
Concerned or not concerned? Spencer Torkelson for me, not concerned. Why? I only watch one thing about Spencer Torkelson, really 2. Swing decisions is 1. And 2, as the president of the On Time Club, I just want to see if he's on time. If he's on time, good things are going to happen. I expect a lot of good things to start happening soon. Still hitting the ball hard, not quite as much as he was. Looks a little tired. I think the day off today is going to help. I think the sleeping in his own bed is going to help. But he needs to start doing it now. They miss his bat. They've been able to kind of spackle over the last, maybe 50 to 60 at-bats. Needs to start hitting the ball hard again. Do I think that's happening? 100%. Next person on the list, a really important person on the list who's really been terrible. Concerned or not concerned? Kerry Carpenter.
Short-term, concerned. Long-term, not concerned. Kerry Carpenter is hitting 246 with 13 home runs, 7 walks, and 58 strikeouts in 73 games. He's been playing on a bum hamstring. He's never stayed healthy for a full season in his MLB career. He's hitting 122 with 0 home runs, 0 walks, and 15 strikeouts in 17 games since his 3-homer game against the White Sox. And he's hitting 168 with a 537 OPS in 31 games since May 17th. Kerry Carpenter has been really bad for more than a month now. This isn't just a week or 2 of poor performance. It's been more than a month. And I don't know if he's healthy. I mean, AJ Hinch says he's healthy. Kerry Carpenter tells AJ Hinch that he's healthy. But how can he be healthy when he runs like he's injured on the bases and he looks lost at the plate right now? It's just a mystery to me. I think in the long term, Kerry Carpenter is going to be okay. But in the short term, I'm really concerned about Kerry Carpenter. Like, does this turn around in the next month or the month after that? Or is this one of those things where he's got to get to the off season? He's got to heal up. He's got to find something again to get going. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I hope that he's able to shore this up sooner rather than later. But when you consider the way things have been trending, again, it's not just like a bad couple of weeks. It's been a bad month, and there's really no underlying data to support that things are going to get better. That's what concerns me the most, especially in the short term. I think long-term career-wise, Kerry Carpenter is going to be okay. I think he'll get back to mashing against right-handed pitchers one way or the other. But I just wonder, like, is he healthy or what's really going on there? Because this is just not the same Kerry Carpenter we're used to. And to me, in the short term, it's really concerning.
Concerned or not concerned? Me, very concerned. However, here's what I have to say. Nobody has a swing based on rhythm on the Detroit Tigers more than Kerry Bonds Carpenter. It's all about the rhythm. It's all about the timing. Richard Shank, his swing guru, it's all about that. And right now, not a lot of rhythm. The good news, there were a couple swings this weekend in Tampa, pretty on time, pretty on rhythm, kind of got cheated of a dong. It hit the top of the fence, had another couple of good swings. Do I think any of this has to do with his hamstring? Not a damn thing. This is a swing problem. This is an approach problem. And I've tweeted about this many, many times in the last 2 months and pretty aggressively in the last 2 weeks. Kerry Bonds Carpenter, not walking. And when I say not walking, I mean never walking. I mean never, ever, never, ever, ever walking. Like 2 walks and 115 plate appearances. Not acceptable. What power hitter does that?
Mark, he had a 7.4% walk rate in 2024. It's all the way down to 2.6 in 2025. You're right. He is never walking.
Swing decisions. By the way, the Tigers have really sophisticated hitting coaches and hitting data. So you know this better than anyone, Evan. You talk to these guys. You're down there. You know the sophisticated batting cage activities they have down there. How much in Kerry Carpenter's ear about swing decisions and about hitting good pitches do you think they've been the last 3 or 4 weeks?
That's the message to everybody, whether it's Riley Greene or Kerry Carpenter or Spencer Torkelson. It's get a good pitch to hit. And when you don't get that good pitch to hit, do not swing.
Well, until he is willing to take strikes and to make better swing decisions, this will continue. The issues will continue. He needs to get on time, get on rhythm, and swing at good pitches. If you're a pitcher in the major leagues, why are you throwing him strikes when he so easily swings at pitches that he can't do much with? So that'll be something fascinating to see in the next month. Can Kerry Carpenter improve his swing decisions and the types of pitches that he's hitting and willing to swing at? All right. Next big question, concerned or not concerned? Tyler Holton.
I'm somewhere between concerned and not concerned. I don't really know what's wrong, and I'm not sure if he knows either. He had a 2.15 ERA between the 2023 and 2024 seasons, ranking first in ERA among 143 pitchers with at least 170 innings during that stretch. He was, by definition, the best pitcher in baseball according to ERA in 2023 and 2024. And then in 2025, Tyler Holton suddenly has a 4.58 ERA in about 35 innings. Like, he's making too many mistakes. And it seems like all of his mistakes are just getting punished for damage. And he tells me, he says that he feels healthy. His pitches have the same velocity. The sinker is still at 91 miles an hour. He likes the movement of his pitches. He's content with the mechanics of his delivery. Like, I think maybe it's an issue with deception, but every single mistake that he leaves in the middle of the plate is getting demolished right now. So maybe it's a mix of bad luck and not being as deceptive, where hitters are picking pitches up easier. And that's why I'm somewhere between concerned and not concerned, because it's Tyler Holton. He's been dominant for a long time. He's got to turn it around, right? But at the same time, like, there doesn't seem to be an exact reason for his struggles or an exact solution other than he isn't executing his pitches and he's getting destroyed for it. He needs to get back to executing pitches. And, he said it's like an inch here, an inch there. And if that's really how it is, then he's got to be painting the corners a little bit better. He's got to keep the ball out of the middle. If he, it's living on the edges, which he does such a great job of doing. He's not doing as good of a job of that right now. And again, even in years past, like when he would make a mistake middle, he wouldn't get punished for it like he is now. And I think that's why maybe it's a deception issue, but it really does start with pitch execution, and he needs to get back to dotting his pitches around the edges of the strike zone. If he's able to do that, he's going to be okay. But right now, I don't really know where things go for Tyler Holton. I hope it gets better, but I don't really know if there's a solution other than just keep pitching and hope that it turns around.
So I have been really trying to watch Tyler Holton very closely, because I think the best reliever the Tigers can acquire is one they have. And that's Tyler Holton. In the last 2 seasons, he did not necessarily start the year looking much differently than he looks right now. What he did do is around the middle of May, he started just absolutely dispatching hitters for the next, 18 to 20 weeks of the season. That has not happened yet. What's really frustrating for me is in watching closely how he's executing his pitches. I've seen a lot of flashes in the last 2 weeks where I'm like, I think he's got it. He's really close. I mean, there was a game against Pittsburgh. First 2 hitters, beautiful execution. Third hitter gets ahead 1-2, allows a home run after he goes to 3-2, dispatches the fourth hitter when he was an opener. Then there was the outing in Tampa where he was the opener, and, we had to take him out of the game before someone got hurt. It was really, really ugly. However, the 2 outings prior to that, he was really, really good. So do I think he's close? Yeah, he's damn close. Do I think the biggest issue right now is obviously pitch execution? A, and B is cutter just isn't finishing the way it did when he was really, really good. So concerned or not concerned? Kind of concerned, but I actually put him in the same classification as Torque, which is I'm seeing a lot of good things. It's just a matter of repetition, emphasis on the good things. And do I think he'll get there? Yeah. Would I be happy if he got there tomorrow? 100%. If he got there August 1st and pitched great in August and September and then the playoffs, I'd be good with that. So I still think there's a lot of upside to Tyler Holton. It's not like he's far away. It's just a matter of hoping he can get that last little bit of finish on his cutter and a little bit better command. And then I think we'll have old Tyler Holton. Next up, concerned or not concerned, Trey Sweeney.
It's pretty easy for me. I'm concerned about Trey Sweeney. He's got a .220 batting average with a .610 OPS in his MLB career, spanning 105 games. His WRC plus is 68 in 2025. He's worth -4 defensive runs saved at shortstop in 2025. He probably needs a trip to AAA Toledo. If that happens, I'm sure he'll be back at some point, but I don't see a path for him to become the Tigers' everyday shortstop in the long term. He's not better than Javi Baez right now. And until that changes, the Tigers don't need Trey Sweeney on the roster if Zach McKinstry is capable of being the left-handed hitting backup shortstop. So yeah, major concerns. Trey Sweeney was brought in and the Tigers acquired him at the trade deadline along with Ferrin Lorenzo. Trey Sweeney traded from the New York Yankees to the Los Angeles Dodgers, then from the Los Angeles Dodgers to the Detroit Tigers. He comes in. I think a lot of Tigers fans thought, oh, maybe Trey Sweeney could be the Tigers shortstop of the future. Well, like I said, it's a .220 batting average and a .610 OPS in his MLB career, spanning 105 games. He's been pretty poor this year. So yeah, if you're hoping Trey Sweeney is going to become the Tigers shortstop of the future, I'm sorry to tell you, he is not that guy.
Concerned or not concerned for me? Yeah, I'm concerned. Look, I'll sum it up. I've said this before on this pod. Trey Sweeney in his career, who has decent power, by the way. It's not like he does not have power, and he will walk. However, Trey Sweeney has 0 home runs in his major league career on a fastball. And I think that tells you pretty much all we need to know. As far as his defense, I think Trey Sweeney turns balls that should be outs into outs. Beyond that, you're not going to really get too much on the fringes. He had some throwing issues this year. It's been a little under the weather as a defender. I think that will probably improve. Do I think he's a shortstop of the future? That wouldn't be a really good future for the Detroit Tigers if Trey Sweeney is going to be the shortstop. Sounds like more like an Al Avila shortstop than a Scott Harris shortstop. Next up on the list, concerned or not concerned, and people, wait till you hear what I have to say. Concerned or not concerned, Jake Rogers.
Yeah, we're going to disagree on this one, I'm sure. I'm concerned about Jake Rogers, not in the short term, more in the long term. I love Jake, and, Tigers players love Jake. Tigers, coaches and managers and front office people, they all love Jake. Everybody loves Jake Rogers, but he is an automatic out at the plate. He's not hitting. He's not hitting for power. His defensive metrics aren't as elite as they were last season. And he doesn't really play anymore. Like now Dylan Dingler has cooled off a little bit. So maybe that bodes well for Jake Rogers. But like Jake needs to start taking advantage of any opportunities that he can get, both at the plate and behind the plate. Additionally, though, like Tigers fans begging for Tomas Nido. Tomas Nido's hitting 200 at AAA Toledo. And all 12 of his hits with the Tigers earlier this season were singles. So pump the brakes there. I don't think Jake Rogers is going anywhere. But I am concerned in the long term with guys like, Ferrin Lorenzo and Josue Briseño. Like they're rising in the farm system. Maybe Lorenzo could be a factor as soon as opening day in 2026 if Jake Rogers doesn't pick it up. I think in an ideal world, Jake Rogers picks it up and he's able to fend off Ferrin Lorenzo for a little bit in 2026. But if Jake Rogers continues to struggle and he's not giving you anything offensively, and defensively, the metrics aren't great, especially compared to where they were at last year. And he's just not playing. And Dylan Dingler is an elite defensive catcher. I don't really see a point of Jake Rogers being on the roster in 2026 and beyond, aside from just being a glue guy who keeps everyone together, which is really valuable. And that could help him out too. I mean, he's somebody that his teammates love him. I mean, I love interacting with him. He's a great guy. But like I say, he's just not getting it done offensively, and defensively, the numbers just aren't there right now either. So I'm kind of scratching my head at, where do things go with Jake Rogers? I think he is a mainstay on this team for the rest of the season. But when it comes to 2026 and beyond, I'm not so sure if Jake Rogers is part of the solution or not here in Detroit to have sustainable winning.
Concerned or not concerned about Jake Rogers? Absolutely 100% not concerned. I want to define what a backup catcher is. A backup catcher is a guy that helps make everyone better. He's kind of like bacon. Bacon makes everything better. Put bacon on anything, it makes everything better. Jake Rogers is bacon. Am I worried about his hitting? He wasn't a good hitter before. Guess what? Jake Rogers still hit 21 homers 2 years ago, so it's not like he can't hit. And do I think his hitting will improve? Yeah, it's actually 3 for his last 8. He's hit the ball a little better the last few days.
And to be fair, it's hard to hit like Jake Rogers wants to hit when he's not in the lineup. That's the hard part too. It's hard to get into rhythm, hard to get into groove. You go back to when, he had his 21 home runs. He played 107 games. He had 10 home runs the next year, played 102 games. Jake Rogers has only played in 17 games for the Detroit Tigers in 2025. It is really hard to get going offensively when you're only playing 17 games. And now I know he was injured, he was hurt, he was banged up, but at the same time, he's barely played. It's been 55 plate appearances. So how do you expect him to get going at the plate when he's just not playing? There is a little bit of a give and take there, right?
Yeah, for sure. In addition, who's a bigger part of the culture? And you're in that room, so you understand the culture. Who's a bigger part of the culture than Jake Rogers?
It's Jake Rogers, it's Matt Vierling, it's Riley Greene. Like, those are the dudes headlined by Jake Rogers and Matt Vierling. Like, there's a reason we had, those two guys on the podcast in the offseason to talk about the 2024 season and the team and the culture and what AJ Hinch has built there, because those are the glue guys. Those are the culture guys. Jake Rogers, more important than anybody else, maybe, in that way.
Okay. Let's talk about a few other things that are baseball related. How about intuitive pitch sequencer? How about in-game pitch sequencer? How about game prep? How about helping Dylan Dingler understand what it takes to be a major league catcher and prepare and understand what to prepare about? How about all those things? People don't really understand those things as a part of baseball. But if you don't understand, I would say to you, you ever spray WD-40 or put oil on a machine? Those are all parts of it. You want to know why the Tigers are one of the smartest teams in baseball? You want to know why they strategically seem to outplay everybody all the time when they're playing well? These are all parts of the reasons why. And Jake Rogers is a huge part of that. The defense, Jake Rogers has never not been an elite defender. And he will again be an elite defender. He's barely played. There's a lot more Jake Rogers to be played in 2025. I promise you, Dylan Dingler has never caught an entire season of Major League Baseball before. He has caught a ton. It was insanely hot the last few weeks where the Tigers have played baseball. I can promise you nobody needs the days off more than Dylan Dingler does right now. And I'm sure AJ Hinch understands this very well because AJ Hinch played what Evan Petzold for 9 years in the major leagues.
AJ Hinch was the catcher. And you mentioned Dylan Dingler, though, Mark, and I think it's important to talk about what he's been doing recently, because for as hot as Dylan Dingler was to start the season, he has cooled off a little bit. And if you really do, again, the defensive metrics don't love Jake Rogers right now, but at the same time, to your point, he's barely played. I think we got to be fair with that. He has barely played. I tried to make that point with the offense. We got to talk about it with the defense too. But Dylan Dingler, the offense has slipped a little bit recently. You go back and you look at what he's done over the course of his past 18 games. He's hitting 185. He's hitting 185 with a 552 OPS in his last 18 games. That is Dylan Dingler. So opportunity, if the defense is similar, if the game calling is similar, which some would argue Dylan Dingler is a better game caller than Jake Rogers, you may disagree with that. You may see them as equal, whatever. The point is if they're somewhat similar defensively, and if Dylan Dingler is down bad offensively, opportunity could be coming for Jake Rogers. My point is he needs to make the most of the opportunity that he could be getting here in the next couple of weeks, because they will pivot to Jake Rogers if they need to. They will allow him to catch the bulk of the games if Dylan Dingler is struggling offensively and he's trying to find it. The only reason they were playing Dingler as much was because his bat was so hot. He was hitting 300 through the end of May. So you're not going to take a guy like that out of the lineup. So if the batting average is falling for Dylan Dingler and he's kind of regressing back to the mean, Jake Rogers, watch out. Your time may be coming, and the time is now to get it going.
Again, Jake Rogers, concerned or not concerned for me? Not concerned. And if you're mean and disrespectful to Jake Rogers, don't come up to me at the ballpark. I will slap the crap out of you.
I hope you don't feel like I'm being mean or disrespectful to him, by the way. I'm trying to just be realistic with things.
No, I get it. I'm talking about fans. You understand it. Fans, you don't understand it. All right, let's move on to the last one. Concerned or not concerned? Straw that stirs the drink. Parker Meadows.
Not concerned at all. He went from February 22nd to May 21st without playing a competitive baseball game. That's 3 months. And then he rehabbed for 8 games. And he's now been with the Tigers for 17 games, hitting 172 with 2 home runs, 7 walks, 16 strikeouts, and a 606 OPS. What is Parker Meadows doing well? He's hitting the ball hard. He's drawing walks. He's playing elite defense in center field. That's why I am not concerned at all. Check back on Parker Meadows at the All-Star break in 2 weeks. The numbers are going to look a lot different. Again, hitting the ball hard, drawing walks, playing elite defense. Parker Meadows, people, he is going to be just fine.
Concerned or not concerned for me? 100% not concerned. Parker Meadows, the fuse is lit. The dynamite's about to go off. Short answer. That's it. I think we're ready to see the real Parker Meadows starting yesterday. All right. What's your first impressions of new reliever Carlos Hernandez? Tons of stuff. Tons of failure at 2 different stops in the major leagues. They claimed him off waivers from the Phillies. We know him from being in Kansas City for the last 23 years. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, he's got to be more consistent with his stuff and with his, pitch location. He's got to be in the zone more often. But again, the stuff like jumps off the page at you when you look at the fact that he's throwing 98 mile an hour fastballs, topping out at 100. He's got great extension. You also look at the fact that he's got the slider, he's got the splitter, like he's got pitches that get whiffs. His slider, it's a 36% whiff rate. His splitter, it's a 44% whiff rate. Like those pitches miss bats, and his fastball, he runs it up 98, 99, 100. Like there is potential in the arm of Carlos Hernandez. The question is, will the Tigers be able to capture it? And will they be able to capture it sooner rather than later? That's the big question. It sounds like right now for Carlos Hernandez, maybe less is more for him. We saw him only throw a 4-seamer, a slider, and a splitter in his first game. And then he mixed in just a couple knuckle curves in his second game for the Tigers. But I think in an ideal world, the Tigers would like him to go 4-seamer, slider, splitter. That's it. So ditch the knuckle curve, ditch the sinker, ditch the sweeper, like get rid of those 3 pitches. Just go with the 4-seamer, the slider, and the splitter. Try to hone those pitches. Get your optimal delivery down and try to locate those where you want to put them. He's just been too erratic. That's been the big concern for me with Carlos Hernandez. Like walks too many guys, not enough strikeouts. It's been inconsistent when it comes to his pitches and what he's trying to do. Doesn't get a lot of ground balls. Like there's a lot of negatives around Carlos Hernandez, but when you look at the raw stuff on a pitch by pitch basis, you can fall in love with this guy. So I'm curious to see what they do with him as he kind of gets more time here. We'll see how long of a leash they actually give him. But I don't know, Mark. Again, I go back to what we talked about last week on the podcast. You go back and you listen to last week's episode, and I talked about it. I said, Scott Harris can go and he can go get a bargain bin, type of a reliever and try to fix him. Like that is one option. And sure enough, right after we finished recording, the Tigers picked up Carlos Hernandez off waivers from the Phillies, and now they have a new project that they're trying to fix. Like, I don't love that idea. Like, I love the idea of going out and getting a guy who's dominant, someone who you can trust, someone who you don't have to fix, someone who you can throw in high leverage, big moments, not someone that when he goes out there, you're wondering, what is he going to give me today? Like, I don't want that kind of guy in the bullpen. I don't think AJ Hinch does either. So I don't know. The project is fun. Carlos Hernandez is an interesting arm, but at the same time, I go back to what I said last week. Go get a legit dude and get him now. What's the reason for waiting? Like, what's the point? Why wait till the trade deadline? Why not go get somebody now? Why not make it a priority? Instead we're jumping into the bargain bin to pull out Carlos Hernandez. Go make a deal for someone legit. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And again, I like the idea. I like the arm. I like the profile. I like the potential. But at the same time, like this team needs relievers who can pitch in high leverage right now. Not somebody who you got to work on for a few weeks and we'll see if it works out or if it doesn't. So that's kind of where I'm at with Carlos Hernandez.
Consider, Carlos Hernandez for me. Look, this looks like it's looked at every other stop that he's been on in his major league career. I have a great inning. Next outing, can't throw strikes. So fastball command is life, as the great Mike Ferrin says. They've been waiting 7 years for Carlos Hernandez to have fastball command. Do I think it's happening here? Could. I'd put it at about 10%. That's hopefully the last time we really talk about Carlos Hernandez, unless he's good. Don't hold out a lot of hope for that. Last thing, any prediction about when we see Reese Olson? I'm going to guess Friday.
Yeah, so Reese Olson coming back from right ring finger inflammation. He completed 2 rehab starts at AAA Toledo. He threw 48 pitches in his first one, then 58 pitches in his second one. He also threw 0 changeups in his first one, and then 7 changeups in his second one. That is progress. Again, not where he needs to be, but it's progress. 0 to 7 is good. 48 to 58 is good. All progress. He needs another start in AAA Toledo, though. So he probably starts Tuesday for the Mud Hens, which would be his final rehab start. AJ Hinch has already said they feel like he needs another start in AAA before he comes off the rehab assignment and returns to the Tigers. So if he starts on Tuesday, that would line him up to start for the Tigers as soon as Sunday. But it would probably be after Monday's off day. So if I had to take a guess, and again, it's kind of like put on a blindfold, throwing a dart at a board, I'm going to say Tuesday, July 1st against the Nationals in Washington, D.C. That makes sense for a target date. We will see what actually happens, but he does need one more rehab start. That should be Tuesday or Wednesday for the Mud Hens. And then again, once he gets back, it's going to be a really good thing for the Tigers. They had been waiting for the return of Reese Olson. He's finally throwing the changeup. He's getting his arm straight and built up. He just needs one more rehab start, and then Tigers fans can rejoice. Reese Olson's going to be back. So that'll be a good thing.
You know, I have a saying, and I always tease Tiger Mike when I say this all the time, which is, I love me some smart people. I love smart people. I love to be the dumbest guy in the room. So I'm going to defer to Evan Petzold because Evan Petzold's pretty smart, especially when it comes to this stuff. I think the prediction of a week from Tuesday starting in Washington is spot on. All right, it's time to get the heck out of here, Ev. I want to remind everybody to please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and especially where, Evan? YouTube.
YouTube.
You can always find us embedded in every single Evan Petzold article at thefreep.com, and subscriptions are pretty cheap at the Freep. So I would suggest, $6 for 6 months is pretty cheap usually. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the magic man, Robin Chan, my amazing grandsons, the spectacular mommy, Savannah Petzold, and until next week, peace.